Hi, welcome back to Pluralsight. For this module on mobile security concepts and technologies, I'm your instructor, Christopher Reese. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, this module is important for a number of reasons because we're going to be covering such things as device security, application security, and BYOD, or bring your own device concerns. Now, these things are important for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the fact that we have a mobile workforce these days. People take laptops home, smartphones have access to email, corporate resources, and so forth. And then when we have employees that can bring their own devices, whether they be Android devices, iPhones, so on and so forth, we have a gamut, or a large gamut, I should say, of devices that we need to make sure we can secure properly. Because again, these things can get lost, stolen, compromised. We need to have ways to ensure that they adhere to our corporate policies, and if they, in fact, do get stolen or misplaced, we can attack that problem as well. So let's take a look at device security. And there's a number of challenges that we need to be aware of. That is such things as full device encryption, remote wiping, and we'll cover all of these as we go through in a little bit more detail. But lockout, or lockout screen, screen locks, kind of hand in hand with a lockout feature, GPS, right, global positioning system, or how we can track cell phones and laptops on the move, application control, storage segmentation, meaning do we use the entire device or do we kind of partition off a section of that device, whether it be a laptop or a mobile device, for corporate use and allow people to retain personal information as well. Asset tracking, how do we know what's where, basically what's been provisioned, is it still in use, should we reclaim it, things along these lines. Inventory control, mobile device management, as I mentioned. Basically, do we allow people to just install whatever they want, or do we kind of lock it down so they can only install certain corporate approved applications? Device access control, again, who has access to the device? Is it only the employee, or perhaps other people that are not necessarily corporate or related to a specific business function? And then removable storage, and then disabling unused features. All right, so let's kind of go through each of these in a little more detail, or most of these in a little bit more detail, I should say. Okay, so as far as device security is concerned, we have some challenges. Fairly obvious, I think, if you've worked in that space for any period of time, but two of the biggest ones could be, or are, I should say, being lost or stolen. These devices are small, they're portable, and they can be easily snatched out of someone's purse, out of the backseat of a car, so on and so forth. All right, you could lay one down on a table while at lunch, walk away for 2 seconds, and when you come back, it's gone. So we need to make sure that we have ways of dealing with that if and when it happens. How about being compromised while on public Wi-Fi? People, again, are a mobile workforce. We have remote salespeople out in the field or people that need to travel. They sit in a coffee shop, whether it's in an airport or just a local coffee establishment. They're on public Wi-Fi. During that time period, they could potentially expose that corporate resource to eavesdropping, to sniffing, so on and so forth. That can basically open up the gates, so to speak, to all that corporate information. So we need to make sure we have ways of controlling that. VPN, as we talked about in the previous video, is probably one of our best defenses against that. How about asset tracking? We need to know who has what device and where that device is located. Again, kind of goes hand in hand with being lost or stolen. And then application management. Do we allow employees to install anything they want, potentially introducing viruses and so forth into the network, or do we have an application management policy in place and procedures in place to allow only certain applications and basically deny if they try to install something that's not within our corporate policy, or perhaps we allow them but it gets flagged and it gets sent up for review. We can go back and contact them later. It really just depends upon your specific environment. Some organizations just allow people to install whatever they want, and they're kind of on their own. Other organizations are very much locked down, and you can only have very specific guidelines as to what applications and what software can be installed on that device, whether it's a laptop or a mobile device. All right, so here's something that I think everyone can relate to. We're so addicted to our phones nowadays. You go to reach for your pocket and you can't find it. All of a sudden, it's like, I think I lost my phone. You get that sinking feeling, and then you realize, oh, it's in my other pocket. Well, that's happened to me probably twice a week. I reach in and oh my God, where'd it go? And then I reach in my other pocket, and there it is. And then all of a sudden, all is well with the world again. So we really have become attached to these mobile devices. So it's important that we make sure we can either remotely wipe them or get that data or secure that data in the event of something like that happening. So how do we do that? Well, we have a few things that we can do to ensure that data, whether it's on a laptop or a mobile device, is secure. Full device encryption. If we have full device encryption turned on, as the name implies, that will encrypt everything on that device. So if it is in fact compromised or stolen, lost, misplaced, we can pretty much rest assured that that data is not going to be recoverable by someone who doesn't have the proper credentials. So that gives us peace of mind in that regard. Ideally, we can have full device encryption turned on and then also a remote wiping capability. A lot of laptops nowadays, Macs have them built in, iPhones have them built in, Blackberries, a lot of the corporate devices already have that type of functionality. But if in fact it is compromised in some fashion, we can go into an administrative console and remotely wipe that device and basically take all the data off of it and either hit a kill switch, so to speak, and render it unusable, or we can just simply reset it back to kind of factory defaults and take all the data off of it. We have some other things such as GPS, Find My iPhone, Find My Mac, those types of things are built in, so we can see graphically on a map where those devices are. So again, if they're lost or stolen, misplaced, we can locate that device fairly easily. We can either lock the device, we can play a sound, ping that device and have it play a sound, so you can identify where it's at relatively quickly, or we can remotely wipe it. And then mobile device management gives us the ability to very easily and granularly control what applications and what settings and how that phone is used or how that laptop is used. So mobile device management, or MDM, there are a number of applications out there and companies out there that specialize in this type of functionality, not the least of which is Good Messaging, AirWatch, which was recently acquired by VMware, and then MobileIron. These are probably the big three in the corporate space or the enterprise space, and they allow us to control what applications can be installed on a device, whether, again, laptop, mobile device, smartphone, so on and so forth. We can say the entire device is under corporate control, or some of these companies can offer functionality that says, okay, we're going to partition off a piece of that phone. So an example of a BYOD, or bring your own device, someone could bring their own laptop, or I'm sorry, their own iPhone, install AirWatch on that device, and cordon off a piece of it and say, okay, this section is under corporate control. So if in fact it gets lost or misplaced, we can wipe that section, but not take away all of that users or that employee's personal data, their pictures, contacts, so on and so forth, emails that are not corporate. So it gives us the ability to control what we need to, but still give them the flexibility to have their personal stuff out of the corporate umbrella, so to speak. Okay, so as I mentioned, mobile device management can allow BYOD devices, or bring your own devices. Sorry about being redundant. It allows us to take those devices and be both corporately managed, but still retain personal information. So I just want to make sure you understand that it is possible to have that BYOD kind of culture, but still maintain some type of corporate control. All right, so back to device security. We have some other things that we need to be aware of, and kind of goes hand in hand with common sense, but corporate policies need to be enforced. And those things kind of revolve around strong passwords, lock screens and screensavers, disabling of unnecessary services. Again, we want to reduce that attack surface. And then application and software control. So if we take a look at these, whether it be a laptop or a mobile device, smartphone, etc., we need to make sure that we enforce, and we can do this through that MDM software. We can enforce strong passwords. We can make sure that users have to lock their phone with a password. They can't unlock it unless they put in a password or a fingerprint or whatever that specific device has available to it. We need to make sure that lock screens and screensavers are in place. For a laptop, it's obviously a lock screen and a screensaver. With a phone, it basically means that that phone will lock itself after 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes, whatever our corporate policy kind of dictates. We want to make sure we disable any unnecessary services. Okay, this applies more toward laptops than it does to smartphones, but even still, again, we want to make sure that we reduce that attack surface as much as possible. Turn off things that we don't need. That reduces kind of things or holes that hackers can look for within the operating system and try to find backdoors into that piece of hardware. And then again, application and software control. We want to make sure, and we can push it out, as I mentioned, with MDM software. We want to control what applications and what software is installed on that device. Whether, again, laptop, smartphone, we can say, yes, you can install these specific pieces of software, and that's it. Or we can kind of go to the other side and say you can install anything you want except 3 or 4, maybe 5 pieces of software. So we can blacklist or whitelist. So something that you need to be aware of is the concept of whitelisting and blacklisting. So with whitelisting, it basically means you can't install anything except for these 4 or 5 or 10 applications that we specifically say you can install. So we whitelist what is able to be installed on that device. So it's very granular, and you have a much smaller kind of base of things to pull from. Conversely, if we're doing blacklisting, we basically say you can install anything you want except for these applications A, B, C, so on and so forth, that we specifically say no to. Just two different ways to approach it.